Hi folks, HR Funk here. Many of you know that I've been a police officer for a long time. Even so, this is one of only a handful of instances where I've appeared on a YouTube video in my uniform. And in all likelihood, this will be the last such occurrence. The reason for that is because recently I've accepted a position outside of law enforcement. And I'm looking forward to my new position. In fact, it involves providing armed security for specific individuals and their families. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a new adventure. But with my move into this new position, I'm drawing to a close a law enforcement career that has spanned over 3 decades. So I thought in honor of this occasion, I would present the following video. And this is a video that I actually recorded some months ago, and it is intended to give you a look at a day in the life of a small town police officer. Now, this is not as dramatic or exciting as the type of things you see on Cops or on other TV shows, but it is authentic. And I've certainly had more exciting days than the one you're about to see. I've had some terrifying days. I've had some days where I went home and I've been laughing so hard it hurt. I had other days where, for various reasons, it hurt to laugh. I've seen some tragic days. I've seen some days that made me feel very, very proud of the things that I accomplished. And through all of them, I've always had a tremendous sense of gratitude for having the privilege of serving as a law enforcement officer. This is a career that I decided I wanted to do when I was very young. It's the only thing that I ever really wanted to do, at least up until this point. And it's one that I'm going to leave a lot of myself behind in once I step out of my current role. So in any regard, I'm going to show the following video. I was originally going to call this A Day in the Life of HR Funk, but I think in light of current events, I'm going to change the name to All Good Things. So I had this idea for a video that I thought some of you might find interesting, to just show you a day in the life of HR Funk. And as you saw on the clock a minute ago, it starts out at about 4:45 in the morning when I have to get up and start to get ready for work. And I'm going to stop the video for a little bit while I change clothes and get a shower, and then I'll pick things back up. And at this point, I've done a few push-ups and sit-ups, showered and shaved, and donned my uniform, so I'm feeling a little bit more alive. Now it's time for the first of what will undoubtedly be several cups of coffee today. Okay, I have that cup of coffee. It's about 5:25, and I have just enough time to tune into the computer and bring up YouTube and see if any of you have left any comments during the night. For some odd reason, I've never known if this is a YouTube thing or if a lot of people just send comments at night, but it seems like when I wake up in the morning, I'll have a lot of comments that have come in on the videos. And I'll see what I have here. And it looks like I have a few, not as many as some mornings. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and respond to these comments. That's going to be about time to head out the door, and we'll take off to my office. Now here's a fun fact for those of you that are interested in YouTube. If you notice, these 3 videos at the top all have been demonetized by YouTube. Now, I've gone through the appeals process with this one and this one. In fact, this is the one that's going to premiere later today. And I initiated the appeal on that about a week ago. That's how long it takes to try to get approval on these things, and it still has not been approved for monetization as of today. So this is always kind of frustrating for me. I've mentioned before that I try hard to make sure these videos are not offensive, that they don't violate any of the YouTube laws, and still just trying to get them so that they'll earn ad revenue is always a challenge. And I know it's because they're firearms related. But that's just, again, my trials and tribulations with YouTube. Okay, 5:45, and it's time to jump into the trusty Jeep and head for my office. And away we go. And after a fairly short drive, I'm about to pull into the parking lot of the police department. And here we are. And I'll get into my parking space here. And it's time to head inside and see what's been happening since the last time I was here. And I'm making my way into the police department. And here is the stack of paperwork for the last several shifts that I have to check over that the officers have submitted. And make sure that's all ready to go to the various courts and prosecutors. And I've arrived in my office. By the way, my sergeant thinks I look like this guy. I don't see the resemblance, but that's why that showed up on my door. And here is my home away from home. Some of you might appreciate a few of the decorations. There's my Camp Perry poster on the wall. And my Marine Corps flag prominently displayed high up on the wall above my door. Now I'm going to have to get busy checking that paperwork because I'm sure some of it's going to have to make its way to the court very shortly. And much as I expected, some of last night's paperwork has to be filed in court today. So I'm about to take off for our local municipal court. It'll take me about 15 minutes to drive there. And court convenes at 8:30 a.m. It's about 6:45 right now, but I have to get the paperwork there early enough that the prosecutors can look it over and the clerks of court can get everything filed properly and all of that. And the drive to court takes me through some of our lovely Ohio countryside here. Everything's looking green and lush here in midsummer, which is nice because a week or so ago everything was looking pretty brown and sizzled. But we've gotten some rain here lately, and that's done wonders for all the vegetation, not to mention the farmers' crops. And very shortly we're going to be driving out of the countryside and back into the city. And I've arrived at our municipal court building. And no one else is here yet. It's still a little too early for any of the employees to have arrived. But conveniently, there is a drop box for paperwork. And I'm going to be depositing my paperwork there. And that takes care of that little chore. Now it's time to find my second cup of coffee for the day and then head back to the office. And I successfully secured my second cup of joe, and I've arrived back in the village, and I have time to do a little bit of patrolling before I go back into the office. So I'm going to take a look around, make sure everything is calm and orderly, which it typically is around here. But just like any police department anywhere, you never know what could happen from one minute to the next. But most days, things in these parts are pretty calm and quiet, which is nice. And this is a nice change of pace compared to the department that I retired from, which was considerably busier. And I think I'll just let the camera run for a little bit. You'll get to see some of the sights around town. There's Village Hall. I'll be going back there in a little while. And coming up off to the left is our fire department. And as expected, everything looks very quiet today. And this is the driveway into our local school, which is fairly new. They just completed construction of this the same year that I came to work here, so the building is now about 6 years old. And since school's not in session, there's not a whole lot going on here. But I always take a drive through and just make sure there's no problems. And there's a better look at the school building. And I'm driving into the sun, so that's not helping with the camera view any. And much as expected, everything looks good around town. So I'm headed back in now to see what might be waiting for me in the office. When I was there the last time, checking paperwork and all that, I really didn't have much chance to check anything else, emails and voicemail messages and such. So it's time to go back in and see what might be waiting for me there. Okay, after handling some administrative things in the office, it's time to move some evidence out of our temporary evidence storage locker over here and put it into our evidence room. So that's going to be my next task, and I'm going to have to use both hands to get the lock open. And I've got my bag of evidence out of the locker, and it's time to move it into the evidence room. And like virtually every evidence room in every police department in the country, when you open the door to ours, the odor of marijuana just about knocks you over. So it's going to take me a minute or two to fill out the paperwork to log this in, and then I'll leave the evidence room and we'll go on from here. And the evidence is properly secured, and I've once again arrived back in my office. And in case you couldn't tell, I'm back in the cruiser, and I'm actually headed out to our department shooting range. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there long, just a few minutes actually. I'm going to do a little bit of test firing with my IWI Masada that you may have seen my recent review video on. And the reason I'm shooting it today is I have not had a chance yet to try it with any of our duty ammunition. And I want to run a few rounds of that through the pistol from each magazine just to make sure it's going to function well. And I'm just going to be at the range long enough to accomplish that task. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm thinking about transitioning to the Masada as my everyday duty weapon. So I'm going to take care of this quick, and I'll take a little bit of video out at the range, not nearly as much as you typically see me take there. And then I'll be back in the car and headed back into town. And I've arrived out on the range with the Masada, as I said, to do a little bit of test firing with it. This is not going to be anything fancy. I'm just going to run 3 quick magazines through with our issued ammunition, which for anyone who's interested is 124 grain Spear Gold Dot plus P loads. And as I said, I'm going to run 3 magazines of this through about as fast as I can load them up and shoot them. And then I'm going to head back into town. I might take a little bit of video of the first few shots that I fire. And after that, I'm going to turn the camera off and just get this done and get myself back into work. Just as an aside, anytime you're considering using a defensive firearm, it's always a good idea to test it out with your carry ammunition and make sure that it's going to function properly. You don't want any surprises if you have to defend yourself or someone else and you're using that firearm and ammunition combination. Alright, like I said, nothing fancy in terms of shooting. I'm just checking the functioning of the Masada with this ammunition. And as I said, I'll keep you folks along for the first few shots just to make sure it's going to function properly. And it worked well enough with that first magazine. By the way, for shooting one-handed and holding a camera with the other hand, that's not half bad accuracy. So I'm going to stop the camera now, try out the other 2 magazines, make sure that ammunition continues to function well, and then we'll pick things back up after that. And just like that, I'm all done at the range and headed back into town. The Masada ran that department-issued ammunition flawlessly with all 3 magazines, pretty much as I expected it would. And like I said a while ago, once I get a micro red dot sight installed on that pistol, it may well become my new everyday carry duty firearm. I doubt that we're going to see a whole lot more of those in the holsters of police officers here in the United States, but I think it's probably going to end up in mine. And I'm back in town and picked out a pretty good spot to just sit and keep an eye on traffic for a while. For any of you that might be interested in the cruiser that I'm driving, this is a Ford SUV. We've got 2 of these currently and another one on order. Normally there would be a computer screen right there, but the one for this cruiser is out of service at the moment. So I've got the keyboard but no screen, which doesn't bother me all that much. I don't use the silly thing too much anyway. Down here I've got my bank of radios and siren controls and light controls and all of that. Back behind me is the screen between the front and back seat. And we've also got the department long gun, which looks to be a little out of focus, which is essentially an M4, although this is the Rock River Arms variety. And I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's outfitted with an Aimpoint patrol rifle optic. So that's about all there is to see on the inside here. And I'm just going to stay here for a while. And as you can see, I'm pretty much out in the wide open. I don't try to hide when I'm working traffic. I would rather have cars see the cruiser and slow down, just to make sure that we keep everything nice and safe as people are driving through the village. And I'm back on patrol. It's turning out to be a beautiful day here. Looks like we might have someone here with some engine problems. I'll see if he needs anything. Need anything?
A little bit problems de smell. Okay, get up. Maybe okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Apparently he doesn't need anything from me. He's not in exactly the best place to be broken down, so hopefully he's not going to be there long. I'll check back on him in a little bit. And again, everything's nice and quiet in the residential parts of the village. There's not even very many people out today, which is kind of surprising, as nice as the day is turning out to be. There's a few more of the sights from our village. We have a restaurant here with a small shopping area around it. And it appears that gentleman who was having the engine problems earlier at least got things straightened out well enough that he could move to a different place because he's no longer here. And that's good because, as I said before, this was not a real good place to be stopped. It just made a difficult place for oncoming traffic to see as they were trying to pass his location. So I'm glad he managed to move out of there. And I've arrived back at Village Hall. Time is just after 11:30, so I'm a little over halfway through my work day. I'm going to step inside and check on a few things in there. And then if anything interesting happens, I'll pick this back up again. Well, I've spent about the last hour and a half interviewing a witness on an investigation that I've been working on for a while now. And at this point, I'm probably going to spend the next hour and a half updating my report for that investigation. And that's going to pretty well bring me to the end of my workday. In fact, it's probably going to take me a little beyond the end of my workday. And as all you police officers out there know, the hours on the schedule are really more or less a suggestion. You end up working however long it takes to get everything done. So my 10-hour day is probably going to become a 10-and-a-half-hour day, or maybe even 11-hour day by the time I get all the paperwork wrapped up. And the longer I talk, the longer it's going to take me to get it done. So I'm going to get to work on that now, and I'll fire the camera back up probably about the time I'm walking out the door. Well, I'm back in the Jeep, and as it turns out, I'm only about 15 minutes past the end of my shift, so I got done a little quicker than I thought I was going to. Now it's time to head for home, and I got an idea. I already know what's waiting for me there. I'm not going to get to go home and kick my feet up and relax. Instead, I'm going to go home and break out the lawnmower and finish mowing my lawn, which I started the other night. And maybe after that I'll get to sit down and relax for a little bit. We'll see what happens. All right, and a little over 11 and a half hours since I showed you my clock this morning in the bedroom. I am now back at home, back where it all began, and it's time to jump out, change clothes, and get that lawnmower fired up. And the clothes are now changed, and I'm making my way back around to the shed for my lawnmower. I'm going to spare you all having to walk around with me while I finish mowing. And again, if anything interesting happens after that, I'll pick the video back up. And at this point, the yard is mowed, and I just took my second shower of the day, and I now have a nice Jim Beam and Coke Zero to relax with out here on my back deck. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but Samantha is in there playing the piano. I can hear that drifting out here, which is always just wonderful to sit and relax and listen to. And before long, it's going to be time for going back in and having supper, and it won't be too long after that that'll be bedtime. And I'll get up tomorrow and do it all over again. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the day in the life of HR Funk. And you might have noticed there's not a lot of time throughout the day for YouTube on one of my normal days, which is why I have to try to squeeze that in on my days off when I'm trying to squeeze in everything else that I don't get a chance to do during my work week. But in any regard, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching, folks. And thank you for allowing me the honor of serving all of you as a police officer for the past 30 years. See you next time. Bye-bye.